Ecology. So today's lecture is community ecology. Some of the concepts will be reviewed from Biology 10 when we talk about competition, exclusion, red squirrel versus gray squirrel, basically. So here we go. Well, first, let's define the term biology, or sorry, not biology, community, which looks at the species and at what percentage they do occur in an area. So it looks at species richness. What's the diversification of it? Okay, this is really bothering me. This needs to be up more. And we'll move this back. Just a little more. Okay, well. Yeah, this is what I'm going to do. A little bit better. Okay. So when we look at this diagram, here's one community, and notice that the different species A, B, C, and D are at equal percentages, 25, 25, 25. Here's species 2, 4 different species, but at various levels. And so both of these can be considered communities. But we can look at species richness, the number of species that are present, as well as the primary productivity of it, how much energy does the species contribute to the environment. So when we look at interactions among community members, there's ecological and evolutionary process behind them. We have predation and mutualism, so things that prey on other things. We have things that benefit each other. We also look at patterns of natural selection, but we can look at communities through 2 scales, a large-scale environment, or just looking at a certain subset of species. So we just focus on one species and we look at how it interacts with the environment around it. Communities are viewed in different ways, and so there are 2 broad kind of concepts here. The first one's, zooming in on the individual itself. So we have the individualistic concept, and this was proposed by Gleason. And it just says that a community is nothing more than an aggregation of species, so a bunch of different species that happen to occur at one place together. And then we have a different type of view by Clements. It's called the holistic concept, which just means that it's kind of like you can view your community as a superorganism, and each species kind of contributes some type of function to the whole, so some of its parts. But the view that is most accepted by ecologists today is that individualistic concept by Gleason. And there's a reason for that. With the individual, if we move geographically or we go back in time, we would not expect to see the same community. We know this is fact. I mean, Minnesota used to have active volcanoes in it, and so it's a completely different community, as well as different species. And those species appear and disappear independently due to the requirements that it needs. The holistic, however, is opposite. That just says that species stay the same through space and time because it's a superorganism, so it shouldn't change. But we do know that communities change over time, and it's because they usually respond to their environments. Okay, so this diagram right here is showing latitudes of certain tree species. Actually, latitudes, of tree species are in the U.S. But here, this is mostly Minnesota, and you can kind of see we have this nice overlap, and that's why we have so many different tree species. In Arizona, here we have the Mexican pine, the Arizona madrone, and the Douglas fir, and based on certain positions on the slope, the proportion of populations are different because maybe they need more water or nutrients or some sort. All right, so species, their abundant patterns do change, but they're mostly independent of each other, but there is a slight overlappage of it. So tree communities are great to look at this because, certain trees thrive in soils, different soils. But we do notice that a continuum does happen, and there are overlappage of certain tree species, with other tree species and whatnot. But sometimes there's abrupt changes, and we call that an ecotone. So this would be an abrupt change because you're going completely from land to water. Okay, moving on to the ecological niche concept or niche. In the movie, I'm going to show you a video, I think, shortly, and I think they pronounce it niche. But niche is basically how the organism uses its resources in its environment. So how does it live? So we have to look at space utilization. How does it use its shelter or the area around it? What types of animals or food does it consume? What's the temperature range? Are there certain conditions for mating? Does, if it's a plant, does it need water in order for the gametes to meet? Are there requirements for certain moisture? And so organisms, even though they are located in one area, sometimes they can't utilize the entire area due to presence or absence of species. And so we're going to talk about 3 different competitions here. Interspecific competition, when 2 species attempt to use the same resource, and there's just not enough of that resource to satisfy both, so there's going to be competition among each other. We have interference competition, where they will fight or displace another organism for some type of physical access to resources. And then we have the exploitive competition, which means consuming the same resources. But before we look at these competitions, we got to look at 2 vocab words here: fundamental niche and realized niche. Fundamental means that what is the species capable of using without any competition? And then the realized is the actual set of environmental conditions, how much space the organism actually occupies. And usually the realized niche is smaller than the fundamental. So this would be kind of like when we talk about chemistry: theoretical yield, actual yield. It's equivalent to this. Okay, so let's look at niche occupancy with barnacles. So J.H. Connell was looking at 2 species of barnacles that grow together on rocks. And so I color-coded this. And, oh boy, C. stellatusi lives in shallow waters. And so due to low tides and high tides, it gets exposed to air. And then the S. balanoids live lower down, and they are rarely exposed to the atmosphere. And what J.H. O'Connell noticed was that the balanoids always outcompeted in the deeper zone by crowding, they undercut, and then they replaced the stellatusi anytime it got into its environment or its niche. So we call this interference competition. So here's a diagram to kind of give you a visual representation of what's going on here. My balanoids are down here, the synthalamus are up here, and then there's this area of overlap where they do compete. So then Connell, what he did is he removed the balanoids from the lower area, and he noticed that the stellatists easily occupied the lower zone, and they could live the low zone up to the high zone. So there was no physiological. It had all the nutrients. It had everything it needed to thrive. The only thing that kept it from the lower area were the balanoids. However, when he removed the stellatists, the balanoids could not survive in the shallow water habitats because they weren't used to being exposed to air. So they didn't have those physiological adaptations. And so when we take a look at the niche versus the fundamental and the realized, with the stellatists, they're fundamental. They could live in shallow and deep zones, but their realized was the narrow part due to the balanoids. And with the balanoids, the realized and fundamental niches appeared to be identical because it could not thrive in the shallower parts of the ocean. So a diagram showing the realized and the final results. So balanoids realized niche here, C. thalamus realized niche here. When we remove the balanoids, the fundamental niche of the C. thalamus, it's just, yeah. All right, competition exclusion can occur when there are limited resources out there. So Grouse, another ecologist, was looking at 3 species of paramecium, and I also color-coded the 3 species, red, green, and blue. And so all 3 of these paramecium, they could grow very well in culture tubes by themselves, and what they eat bacteria and yeast. However, when you mix the P. aurelia with the P. caudatum, so the red and the green, the caudatum went extinct. And that's because the P. aurelia were able to utilize all those resources better than the caudatium. So here's a definition of competitive exclusion. If they are competing for unlimited resources, the species that uses the resource more efficiently will eventually eliminate the others locally. Another example that I presented to you in Biology 10 was red squirrel versus gray squirrels. We had a nice little debate about that, how the red squirrel's so cute, and then the American gray squirrel was just bigger and stronger and faster, and is just eliminating those red squirrels over there.
Just better, basically.
So there's this underlying theory that says no two species with the same niche, which means they require the same resources, same habitat, everything, can coexist when resources are limited. So here's a graph showing population density over a period of days. The P. aurelia. Notice that their population increases, with time, because they're growing and dividing and there's lots of resources. Here's P. caudatum, again, almost similar to the P. aurelia. So these, they're separate in their tubes. And then the P. brisauria right here. Now, when we combine the green and the red together, notice that the aurelia dominates and is able to use its resources more efficiently than the caudatum, and the caudatum population decreases. And that's, they have the kind of the same type of curve. You overlap it, one of them's going to go up, one of them's going to go down. However, when we mix green with blue, they were able to coexist efficiently, and that's and when I read the paper, it's because they ate bacteria and yeast in different gradients. So one kind of skimmed the top of the surface, and the other one was more towards the bottom. When these two actually fed kind of the same way, so yeah. So there's a niche overlap in coexistence with the caudatum and the brisauria. Both species survived. They divided their resources. The upper part was the concentration of oxygen and bacteria were high, so the caudatum thrived there. And the lower part, low oxygen concentration and yeast high. So they just kind of fed on different resources. So the fundamental was that they could thrive in the whole culture tube by themselves, but when you combine them, the realized niche was just a portion of the tube. However, competition can lead to resource partitioning, which means they're going to kind of select certain parts or subdivide the niche. And so MacArthur studied 5 species of warblers, and warblers are birds. They're small insect-eating songbirds. But he noticed that they all appeared to be competing for the same resource. So he was like, okay, well, eventually one of them's going to win. But as he studied them for over a course of 2 summers, he found that each species fed on different parts of a spruce tree, so they never really were competing with one another. They were able to coexist through the process of resource partitioning. Okay. So a diagram depicting the 5 warblers that he studied and the shaded area of where they got their resources from. And you notice that they're all kind of different parts of the tree. There are, slight overlappage, but not too much where they can't coexist. And there's this video link down there. If you opened it up in PowerPoint, you can copy and paste the link. But it's pretty epic. We are not going to watch it just for the sake of time because I have other videos to show you. But it's a great, epic YouTube video. Okay, moving on to predator-prey relationships. Predation, remember, is when an organism consumes another organism, is consumed by another organism. So in this case, I have a predatory protist called the Didinium, and then the prey is the Paramecium. You can kind of see that the Didinium is eating this Paramecium, just eating it like that. Okay. When we look at the graph, this is just a basic graph of predators and preys. So prey population increases, and as a result, your predator population will increase because there's more food for the predator to eat. If, however, you allow a refuge, the prey population will persist, but some predators, might come extinct. But that's not, we don't always get that. Instead, we get this nice little, oscillations, where the prey population will increase, and then your predator population will increase, and then all the prey will be gone. Then your predator population decreases dramatically. Now with low predators, the prey can repopulate, and so you've probably seen graphs of snowshoe hares and lynx or something like that, or wolves and moose or something like that. I don't know. But predation does strongly influence prey populations. Predators do have a large effect on prey populations, and even the prey themselves can affect the dynamics of predator populations, so they go hand in hand. So we're going to talk about prey population explosions and crashes. And so some great examples: white-tailed deer, in eastern United States. So there was this huge elimination of large carnivores like wolves and I don't know what else, coyotes or something like that in eastern United States, because people are populated in the eastern United States more heavily than the western. So as a result, white-tailed deer has really exploded in those parts. Sea otters at one point were hunted to near extinction, and as a result, sea urchins exploded in population, which was really bad because sea otters are actually a keystone species. So,
sea urchin?
Yeah.
How?
I don't know. They love it, though. They absolutely love sea urchins.
My God.
The reason why sea otters are keystone species is because they eat... sea otters are keystone species is because they eat sea urchins. And sea urchins prey on kelp. Now, kelp forests provide a refuge for many, many different types of species. So if you have a kelp forest, you're going to have lots of biodiversity. And when you have a lot of biodiversity, everything just kind of works. You have things that contribute to the ecosystem, and you have things that take away, and it's just, it's beautiful.
So we kind of need to find a keystone species to eat zebra mussels? Something.
I don't know if a keystone species is is the word you're looking for, but you definitely need something that can eat zebra mussels but doesn't affect the rest of the ecosystem.
They didn't find that.
When sea otters are absent, so near extinction, did I say sea urchins again? Sea otters are absent. The sea urchin population exploded, and they overgrazed the kelp. They can't stop themselves. And so there goes your biodiversity. It just tanks. And so here we call it a trophic cascade, where no sea otters means that your sea urchins increase, and that means your kelp forests decrease. But with sea otters present, you're going to get a lot of kelp. So.
What overgrazed the kelp?
What? The sea urchins.
The sea urchins eat
kelp? They eat kelp.
I didn't even think a sea urchin could move. But.
With predation and prey, sometimes a unique relationship occurs between the two, and coevolution occurs. So predation provides this strong selective pressure on that population. And so maybe a feature in the prey population is either going to decrease probability of being captured, and it's going to be strongly favored and be passed on to the next generation. So as a result, we get this coevolution or evolutionary arms race, where this prey evolves something that's going to help it survive, and then the predator is going to counteract and come up with a new feature to kind of overtake that feature, and it goes back and forth, and so you get highly sophisticated organisms. So one example is bats and moths, and I'm going to show you a short clip on this.
Sharp-eyed predators are everywhere, so potential prey like moths lie low. Their ancestors millions of years ago were active by day, but as birds multiplied, moths fled to the night.
They're back.
For millions of years, moths had the night skies to themselves, and they filled them. But around 50 million years ago, one of the greatest arms races of all time began.
God.
The ancestors of bats were small mammals which pounced on insects. Flying was a ticket to the vast larder of moth that filled the night skies. But how could they find small, fast-moving prey without sunlight? Bats use their ears. They emit high-intensity pulses of sound.
Oh, just disgusting. Like mice wings.
Then listen for echoes bouncing back. Their brains process these reflections into a three-dimensional image, an accurate picture of their dark world.
That is kind of crazy.
Slowing down picture and sound gives a clearer view of each encounter. This sonar is a brilliant weapon for finding prey in the dark, making bats successful around the world.
Moths were getting ravaged.
Just snipe them.
Bats, though, didn't have it all their own way for long. Moths evolved a counter-weapon, a simple ear that could detect approaching sonar.
Just drops.
An early warning allows the moth to swerve away.
Idiot.
As bats approach, they increase their calling rate. For moths, an emergency cue to plummet. Though not always to safety.
Oh, still got it.
Many bats are superb fishermen. It's even possible that hunting over water has become a deliberate ploy to snare diving moths.
Now you're dead. You can't get it now.
My fish just jumps out of the water, eats the bat.
That's what I want to see.
The shark eats the
That's
fish.
what I'm just.
As insects became better at detecting sonar, bats required a countermeasure.
How did I just develop this stuff?
In a shadowy corner, a strange creature is stirring. Long-eared bats have defeated the insect ear by improving their own hearing. Instead of hunting by sonar, they use their outrageously large ears to listen for the sounds of insects.
Yuck.
So gross.
Even the
Like, it
tiny
doesn't
beat
look
of moth
real.
wings
Hate
can
bats.
be filtered out from the sound of rushing water.
So I have
The
those,
bats
but they
still
never
use
look
sonar to avoid branches, but as they approach their prey, they switch that off and enter stealth mode. Now, the bat steers entirely by the wing beats of its prey, but the system isn't perfect. This bat approaches from the wrong side. It can hear the moth, but through the leaf.
Idiot.
Go, Mom.
A lucky escape for the moth. Although the bat's hearing is superb, the method has yet another flaw. If the moth stays still, the bat can't locate it.
Just turn back on your sonar. Just hovering
Then it's gonna hear it and just drop away.
there. And then you can hear
By
what's
maintaining silence, the moth is perfectly safe.
Look at that thing fly.
The hunter is forced to give up,
Mom just
but sooner or later, the moth must move, revealing its presence.
He's back.
He's like, I knew you were here.
Just eat some.
Nice try, bud.
That would suck.
Valiant effort.
Bats
Oh,
have kept pace
God, I
with their
hate
prey's
those.
attempts to evade them. And today, the
You
night
can
skies
evade.
are full of specialized moth killers.
Not available yet.
To avoid them, some moths are taking the ultimate
Just shoot
evasive
'em all.
action.
Okay.
In Venezuela,
Just gonna
What's the ultimate evasive action?
Yeah.
Okay, so we've been focusing on animals. We even plants have adaptations to defend themselves against herbivores. So we've talked just a little bit when we were talking about plants here, but some morphological defenses: thorns, spines, prickles, plant hairs, silica deposits, anything to kind of make it seem like it'd be too much work to eat or painful to eat.
It's a silica deposit.
Sand, like it's gritty. So you want to eat sand, yeah.
It tastes pretty good.
No. That would.
Okay. Plants also have chemical defenses, and we did talk about this, where here this is some kind of caterpillar. It's eaten the plant, it's wounding it, so the plant turns on a signal transduction pathway that releases some type of attractant chemical to the air, which brings the wasp, parasitoid wasps, to the plant, or attracts it somehow, and then the wasp says, oh hey, there's a caterpillar to lay my larvae and eggs on. So, yeah.
How long does it take for the eggs to hatch then?
The eggs to hatch, well, probably like a week, but it's donezo.
Slow
So,
process.
mhm.
So it kills it. It's fine.
Yeah, the eggs
Insert.
hatch.
The
and then
eggs hatch and eat the caterpillar for food.
It's just
There is a coevolutionary response of herbivores. So one is the monarch butterflies. They feed on milkweed. And the toxins from the milkweed tend to fend off predators, and the monarchs have utilized this toxin. Birds that eat monarch butterflies get sick and throw up. So then the bird later on remembers, okay, last time I ate something like that, I got super sick, so I'm not going to kill that butterfly. And so there's what?
It doesn't help out the one who died already.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. But as a result, some organisms have kind of stole that warning colorization of monarchs, so we call them viceroy butterflies. Animal adaptations also defend against predators, so we have cryptic colorization, which means they camouflage, they blend right in. Who knew that was an inchworm caterpillar? Who knew? Yeah. Aposematic colorization means it's advertising saying, hey, don't eat me because I will kill you or make you sick. And as a result, some different species, have adapted that colorization, even though they're not harmful.
Poser.
Yes, a poser. Good word. Chemical defenses, we have stings like with bees and wasps. We have toxic alkaloids with tree frogs here. So, yeah. Here's that mimicry that I was talking about with the viceroy butterfly. It mimics the monarch butterfly, but you can see that they are not the same, but they look very similar when you just take a quick glance at it. So this is the distasteful species, and this is the taste, the one that tastes delicious, basically. So we call it Batesian mimicry. So it mimics the one that's harmful. So it's in disguise. Another example, the coral snake is venomous. The scarlet king snake is non-venomous, but notice that they are adapting the colorization. There's a saying out there.
Kill all snakes.
No. So go. Oh shoots! Did I put it in the?
Meats yellow.
Yeah, something. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about, Sirach. Do you know it?
I don't know which one's right. There's like
If red meets yellow, you're sure to die a quick death.
like red meets black is stay back or something.
No, red meets black is fine.
Yeah, red meets black is fine, but when red meets yellow, you're a dead fellow. I don't know.
Something.
Okay.
All right.
Honeybees,
I'd be so freaked out either way.
they tend to sting. So we have this hoverfly, which is just a fly, but it mimics a honeybee, so it doesn't get eaten.
Oh shit! No.
All right, another type of mimicry, the Mullerian mimicry, a natural phenomena. Two or more poisonous or venomous species. They may not be closely related, share one or more common predators, and they have come to mimic each other's warning signs. We have the cuckoo bee and the yellow jackets, and here's that. This is where the poisonous frogs set in.
Why do they mimic each other's warning signals? Just so that like both of them know?
Mm-hmm.
So they're help a brother out.
Okay, moving on to species interactions. So we're going to talk about symbiosis and predation and mutualism and commensalism. So symbiosis just means that two or more kinds of species interact in either a more or less permanent relationship. There are three types. Commensalism, which means one species benefits, the other one is not harmed. Mutualism, both species benefit, and then parasitism, one benefits, the other one is harmed.
Oh, there's lots of you here.
I have a question on the human body.
Yep.
Do we send out active notes to everyone?
Wait, active?
If you want.
Oh,
How else are you going to keep your participants engaged? You can ask them questions instead.
I just figured they'd be engaged. You guys
Yeah,
are engaged,
right.
right? Oh boy.
Oh.
All right, going to move on.
Never
So a
do
slide
this
just kind of
thing.
depicted different types of mutualisms, commensalisms, and parasitism. So with mutualisms, they both benefit. So coral and clownfish. I don't know if this is actually true. The Nile crocodile with an Egyptian plover. Commensalism. My favorite is the hair mites that live on your eyebrows. You have like 20 mites that live on each hair follicle, and they just eat dead skin and bacteria for you, but they don't harm you.
You do you, Scotty Fields.
So would that be mutualism?
Nope. It's commensalism.
But aren't they eating away the dead skin? Wouldn't that be a benefit?
You're exfoliating it anyways. And the bacteria on your skin help fend off other diseases. The bacteria in your skin is actually like good for you for the most part. All right, and then parasitism, where one benefits and the other one does not. So roundworms or hookworms or wasp eggs, mosquitoes. So with commensalism, one species is physically attached to members of another, and there's different examples of this. Epiphytes, plants that grow on the branches of other plants. The host is unharmed while the epiphyte benefits. In Florida, you see a lot of epiphytes on the trees down there. Spanish moss will grow in trees to gain access to sunlight, but they do not harm the tree. So that's one example of an epiphyte. Barnacles can grow in actively moving animals. So you can see here with this whale, those are barnacles on the whale. It's not hurting the whale, but the barnacles do benefit because they gain protection from predation and they can reach new resources in the ocean for food. Okay, moving on. Mutualism and coevolution. Best examples are flowering plants with their animal visitors. So we watched The Secret Lives of Plants with insects, birds, and bats, and how they had some kind of adaptive structure that would attract a certain species to help pollinate it. And so it went back and forth. Animals visit for food and spread pollen. So, short video.
Whenever a huge tree falls in the Costa Rican rainforest, a gap of sunlight is formed in the canopy. New life competes for this light, like this vine racing this sapling upward. But there's one tree that never has any competition, thanks to an incredible symbiotic relationship it shares with an ant. The swollen thorn acacia and its namesake, the acacia ant, have developed harmonious roles in each other's lives. The ant's role is as protector. If any of those vines try to steal the acacia's light, the ant security guards go to work. A few good chomps on the vine stems, and it lights out for the vine.
Did he die with it?
The ants don't stop there. This relatively huge grasshopper may think it's going to take a few bites out of the non-poisonous acacia, but the ants take a few bites out of it instead.
Ouch.
And they throw in a few stings for good measure. In exchange for all this protection, the tree takes on the provider role. It gives the insect everything it needs in terms of food and shelter. These little nodules, or nectaries, secrete a sweet nectar for the adult ants to eat. And these brownish pods at the end of some leaves are the perfect, nutrient-packed food for the ants' developing young, called larvae. The acacia ant larvae live down hollowed-out thorns at the base of the acacia leaves. Some will eventually grow into adults with wings and will fly off to replicate this evolutionary masterpiece in a new acacia.
That's really cool.
Parasitism, we have external parasites. External parasites. We have ectoparasites that feed on the exterior surface of an organism. So tick, parasitoid wasps. We have parasites. They are internal parasites. We call them endoparasites that live within the body of their host. So tapeworm.
Yuck.
I don't know. I think this might be a roundworm, maybe. Okay, so this next video is a parasitic mind control that deals again with ants and certain parasites.
Ants are a part of the most disciplined, dedicated social system on Earth. Until, that is, they become slaves to behavior-controlling parasites. Suddenly, these rogue ants no longer serve the colony. They're taking their orders from the parasite. Okay, let's back up. Now, how did this happen? It all begins when the ants in any town, USA, consume the slime of a passing snail. They divide it up and take it back to the colony. This is a blunder of epic proportions. Turns out, the slime is loaded with eggs of a body snatcher called the liver fluke, a type of flatworm. The liver fluke burrows into a part of the ant's brain, and for unknown reasons, it's almost like the fluke enslaves the ants and orders them to carry it to their next hosts. Any grazing mammal host with a nice warm liver will do, but in this case, a cow appears. The liver fluke worms can switch the ant's behavior on and off, causing the infected ants to place themselves in easy-to-eat positions at dusk when mammals are feeding. No cows in sight, ants act normal. Cows appear, ants are in essence ordered to take their positions in purple flowers and latch on. The cows ingest the vegetation, the ants, and the fluke larvae inside the ants all in one bite. Once inside the cow, the worms burrow out of the stomach and into the liver, where they develop into adults and dine on liver tissue. They lay eggs that are excreted from the liver into the bile duct and then defecated by the cows. They don't kill the cows, but the cows become weak and emaciated, devastating herds. And all because of parasitic mind control.
It's all. Well, that's disturbing.
Conspiracy theory.
Okay, we do know that in the community, one type of interaction often occurs at the same time. So there's different types of interactions out there, and the outcome of it can be modified or even reversed when another type is also occurring.
You just worm your cattle and then they all die.
Yeah.
Not
Okay. So one type of ecological process is predation, and predation is always going to reduce competition. So we know that when resources are limited, that superior competitor will succeed or thrive through competition exclusion. Predators often prevent or greatly reduce competitive exclusion by lowering the numbers of the individual of the competing species. Payne, back in 1974 in his study of starfish predators, when he removed starfish predators from intertidal zone, it led to the local extinction of all large invertebrates except one mussel species. When the starfish predator was present, inferior competitors were able. So, oh, I thought I had another diagram there. Oh, sorry. Parasitism may also counter competition. So one study, they looked at flower beetles with and without a parasite. And if it did not have a parasite, the flower beetle T. castaneum was dominant over T. confuseum, and the T. confuseum became extinct. However, when the parasite was present, the outcome was reversed, and the T. castaneum perishes. So can counter competition. It can change or alter the fates of certain species. And then some indirect effects where they are not directly interacting with one another, yet just because of its presence of one species, it affected a second, and then as a result, a third species is affected. So kangaroo rats and ants eat seeds in their community. So you would think, okay, they're going to compete with one another for these seeds. But when all the rodents were removed, ant populations increased but then declined. Well, why? Rodents preferred large seeds and ants prefer small seeds. So when you remove the rodent, it led to the increase of plants with large seeds, thus reducing the number of small seeds available to the ants. So that's an indirect effect right there. Yeah. Picky eaters. All right, and I think this might be close to our last slide here. Ecological succession, disturbance, and species richness. So succession just means species composition and communities change over time. If you remember that cheesy song, Succession. changes happen. I'll just stop right there. Oh, really? Wow. I'll just have to revisit that. Anyway, succession results from both biotic and abiotic factors. So we start with primary succession, which means that there is no life. You start with bare rocks or a volcanic island. Mosses and lichens move in. They break down the rocks to form soil. Now that you have fertile soil, plants and grasses can move in. Once you have plants and grasses, your plant species get larger and larger, and as a result, animals are going to move in here because they can eat the plants and grasses and thrive in the trees and etc. So now this is secondary succession. Wildfires are secondary succession because you don't destroy the soil. You just destroy everything on top of it. And so it picks up like right here. But primary succession is bare rocks, no life whatsoever. Oh, look at that. 2 types of succession, primary versus secondary. So like I said, bare, lifeless substrates, lichens start in, produce the soil, then organisms gradually move into the area. Secondary succession, you have the soil already. Okay. Traces of clearing will disappear. It's basically a reestablishment of the community. I can't believe you guys do not remember the succession.
I know what's familiar. It sounds familiar. Oh yeah, I remember this. Yeah.
Maybe I remember this. We did this and
Please stop it now.
Just stop it.
Stop it now.
Not until they say so.
Oh, I remember this.
I think I remember this now.
Yeah, you were the one singing
I don't think I was. Oh yeah. Yep.
All right, I'll stop.
Hey, I like that.
No.
Much.
Okay. Yeah, that's it. That's ecology. Ecology is done. Final exam is due tomorrow. We start our human biology projects tomorrow as well.
Oh boy.